Cancelled my family cruise because my parents don't love me now. They're crying crocodile tears that I ruined their vacation when I saw them smiling on social media. My parents had grand plans for a holiday cruise, extending invitations to me, 25F, my boyfriend, 27M, my brother James, 28M, and his girlfriend, 26F. But James has always been their precious golden child, a fact that's been etched into every chapter of our family history. Picture this. Back in high school, when James was caught dealing pills, my parents brushed it off as just a phase. Meanwhile, when I was caught with a mere joint, they threatened to throw me out onto the streets. The pattern continued. James lost his scholarship and dropped out of college not once, not twice, but 3 times, yet somehow remained their perfect angel. I graduated just 1 semester late, and in their eyes, I was the disappointment who didn't try hard enough. The disparity in their treatment is like a canyon that grows wider with each passing year. James still resides in his college state, neither working nor studying, while I live near our parents in our home state. They shower him with airline tickets for visits, yet when it comes to me visiting him or traveling elsewhere, I might as well be asking for the moon. They bankroll his rent and necessities, which apparently includes a luxurious $22,000 dog he recently acquired with their money. The moment I landed my first significant job at 22, they swiftly cut me off their insurance since I had benefits available. James? He basked in their coverage until he turned 26 last year. When life threw me a curveball and I got laid off, I moved back home to rebuild my savings. As soon as I secured a new position, they blindsided me with a demand for $10,000 in back rent, a requirement that had never been mentioned before. I chose to pay it, partly because I recognized the inconvenience my extended stay caused during their home renovations, but mostly because fighting it seemed like opening Pandora's box of family drama. Yes, I probably need to work on my tendency to yield. It's a character flaw I'm beginning to acknowledge. Fortunately, my career as a technical writer provides me with a comfortable income, allowing me to clear the debt within 6 months while simultaneously saving for my own place. For those curious about the timeline, the axe of layoffs fell in January last year. I stretched my savings until my lease expired in June, then sought refuge under my parents' roof. From June of last year until this September, their house was my harbor. In May, when I secured my current position, they dropped the bombshell about back rent and ongoing payments until I moved out, supposedly to motivate my independence. By the time I sailed to safer shores with my boyfriend, the total had swelled to $10,000, most of which I'd already paid off. I've seen suggestions about pursuing legal action against my parents, but that path seems like trying to douse a fire with gasoline. Without a written agreement, and given my tacit acceptance of the payments, any legal battle would be futile. Besides, it's paid now, a closed chapter I'd rather not reopen. Moving forward, I recognize the need to develop a stronger backbone against their demands. But when you've spent a lifetime dancing to someone else's tune, changing the rhythm isn't easy. I've always strived for perfection, desperately seeking the same love and support they shower upon James. The most heart-wrenching part? James and I were once as close as shadows at sunset. Growing up, he was my protector, my guide, my friend. He taught me to ride a bike, stood between me and schoolyard bullies, and spent countless nights exploring RuneScape together. He's not a villain in this story, just someone who never learned to spread his own wings because our parents never stopped building his nest. Our relationship has grown thorny now, primarily because he can't, or won't, see the stark contrast in our treatment. He maintains his unwavering allegiance to our parents' narrative, though he still treats me with surface-level kindness. Now, about this cruise, the final straw that broke this camel's back. My parents purchased tickets for themselves, James, and his girlfriend, but told me to finance my own since I had a well-paying job. When I expressed my frustration at being the only one required to pay, they accused me of being spoiled, claiming green wasn't a good look on me, a phrase I've grown sickeningly familiar with. They tried to rationalize it by saying I didn't need a nice room since we'd barely be in it, yet somehow James deserved that luxury. That's when something inside me snapped. I decided I wouldn't go, but here's where my actions might raise eyebrows. I maintained the illusion of my attendance for months. The night before departure, they instructed me to arrive at their house by 8 a.m. for an 8:30 a.m. departure to the port. As their messages asking about my whereabouts flooded in, I delivered my coup de grace. Since you didn't want to put the effort into having me join you, I'll be celebrating Thanksgiving with my boyfriend instead. Enjoy your trip with your favorite child. Then I silenced the conversation. When I shared this tale with my friends, opinions were divided like a fork in the road. Some labeled my last-minute cancellation as petty, while others suggested I should have swallowed my pride and gone anyway, arguing that enjoyment would have found me once there. As the cruise days sailed by and social media flooded with their pictures of paradise, doubt began to creep into my mind like a slow tide. Perhaps I could have found moments of joy, and yes, the ticket wasn't beyond my means. The way I delivered my message could have been more graceful, but years of being treated like a second-class family member had left their mark on my soul. Update, 5 days later. First, let me apologize for vanishing into the ether after my initial post. Life has a way of sweeping us along, doesn't it? I penned the original story during a quick work break, and then my boyfriend and I embarked on our own adventure to his family's holiday cabins. I made a conscious choice to be fully present in those moments, which meant my phone stayed largely untouched until today. The sheer volume of responses when I finally checked back was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a fire hose. After 20 minutes of scrolling through the endless sea of comments, I surrendered to the impossibility of responding to each one individually. Instead, I'll address the common threads I noticed weaving through the responses. Feel free to skip ahead about 10 paragraphs if you're eager for the update. I tend to be quite verbose, as you've probably noticed. Let's start with the elephant in the room, the $10,000 back rent situation. The number itself wasn't what made my stomach churn. While it was steeper than I'd have liked, it wasn't entirely unreasonable given my length of stay. Had I ventured out on my own during that period, my savings would have evaporated like morning dew, likely leaving me drowning in debt while searching for work in my field. During my time there, I wasn't completely idle. I juggled a serving job and freelance writing gigs, contributing to groceries though not to rent or utilities. So when my parents requested compensation once I was back on my feet, I understood the principle behind it. My frustration stemmed from the ambush nature of the request. Why not establish these expectations from the beginning instead of springing them on me like a trap? Regarding the timing of my cancellation, yes, I acknowledge it was a move worthy of a chess grandmaster's calculated strike. Had I revealed my plans earlier, I would have endured months of emotional siege warfare, with them launching volleys of guilt trips and insults at every opportunity. My method, while perhaps lacking in grace, spared me from their relentless campaign of manipulation. And yes, I'll admit it, there was a certain poetic justice in giving them a taste of their own medicine. Their vacation proceeded without a hitch. Their social media posts painted a picture of perfect family harmony, minus one conspicuously absent daughter. The comments suggesting low or no contact with my family have planted seeds in my mind that are beginning to take root. My boyfriend, who has witnessed firsthand the emotional toll of their behavior, stands firmly in my corner. My friends, once I finally opened the floodgates and shared the full scope of our family dynamics, will undoubtedly support whatever decision I make. I've always been hesitant to burden them with these stories, partly to avoid seeming like a constant complainer, but mostly because speaking these truths aloud makes them feel more real, more painful. Now, let me share what has transpired since my last post. Wednesday evening found us arriving at the cabin, where I presented my boyfriend's mother with her favorite flowers, a small gesture that lit up her face like a sunrise. We shared a glass of wine and conversation with his family before retiring for the night. Though uncertainty still clouded my mind like morning mist, their warmth began to thaw my frozen spirits. I made a silent vow that night to leave my family baggage at the door and immerse myself in the present moment. Thursday dawned bright with promise. We helped his mother in the kitchen, our hands working in harmony to prepare the feast. Later, we engaged in a spirited game of cornhole with his cousins, though my athletic prowess, or lack thereof, ensured our defeat. The Thanksgiving meal was a masterpiece of home cooking, but the real feast was the feeling of belonging that surrounded me like a warm embrace. As the evening drew to a close, his mother pulled me aside and whispered words that made my heart flutter. While the final decision rested with her son, she hoped I would one day officially join their family. My response, that I would be honored, came straight from my soul. The love I share with my boyfriend runs as deep as an ocean, and the prospect of becoming part of his family feels like finding a lighthouse after years of stormy seas. The remainder of our weekend unfolded like pages from a storybook, hiking through nature's canvas, gathering around crackling bonfires, engaging in friendly board game battles, and losing ourselves in movie marathons. Watching my boyfriend interact with his young nephew, their heads bent together over colorful Lego creations, stirred something primal in my heart, though thoughts of starting our own family will remain safely tucked away for at least a few years. Yesterday's return to reality felt like waking from a beautiful dream, leaving me already nostalgic for those precious moments. The contrast between this drama-free holiday and my family's usual emotional battlefield made their dysfunction even more apparent. But reality has a way of demanding attention. Last night, my parents reached out, their mood apparently unimproved by their ocean adventure. My father launched the first salvo, a passive-aggressive text accompanied by vacation photos and the message, "Sad that you chose not to be with your family in such beautiful places." I countered with my own snapshot of joy from my boyfriend's family gathering. "Looks like you guys had a good time." So did we. Then came my mother's phone call, dripping with manufactured concern about how I must be regretting missing out on a great family vacation and spoiling their memory due to a petty grudge against my brother. When I clarified that my issues stemmed from their blatant favoritism rather than any conflict with James, she unveiled their twisted logic. I was being unfair by comparing our situation since James needs help while he figures out his direction while I've always been more independent. The irony of her words struck me like lightning. I was independent precisely because they had never given me the option to depend on them. When I pointed this out, she declared she wouldn't apologize for raising a self-sufficient daughter and delivered her ultimatum. Either grow up and show gratitude for their parenting or leave them alone for good and break their hearts all at once instead of doing it piece by piece. She accused me of cruelty for dangling the hope of a wonderful holiday only to snatch it away at the last moment, though their social media posts suggested they managed just fine without me. As I attempted one final time to illuminate the years of disparity with specific examples, she dismissed my perspective entirely. You have a lot of nerve putting our parenting under a microscope when you have no children yourself and have never had to make tough decisions. That was the last straw. I guess I'll just leave you alone like you want, I responded, my voice trembling with emotion, since I'll never be enough for this family anyway. I ended the call and let the tears flow freely, but my boyfriend was there, as always, to catch me. We spent the evening healing my wounded spirit with ice cream and the Hunger Games. I'm a die-hard fan of the series and can't wait for the new movie. Today's return to work felt surreal, like wearing a mask of normalcy while carrying an ocean of emotions beneath. Yet somehow, the routine provided a welcome distraction. Unlike the exhaustion I would have felt after the cruise, I feel oddly refreshed, battle-weary perhaps, but stronger. My parents' silence continues, but I suspect it's merely the calm before another storm. They'll likely resurface when they need something, or attempt to smooth things over before Christmas to avoid explaining my absence to the extended family. I stand at a crossroads now, uncertain whether to accept any future olive branches they may extend. One path leads to maintaining the status quo, continuing to chase their approval while being treated as an afterthought. The other path leads to independence, scary and uncertain, but potentially liberating. The love and acceptance I've found in my boyfriend's family shows me what healthy relationships should feel like, making the contrast with my own family even more stark. The fear of them turning the extended family against me with their twisted narrative weighs heavily on my mind. There are relatives I genuinely care about, but my parents' influence runs deep in our family tree. The question becomes, is maintaining these connections worth the cost to my mental health? And then there's James, my brother, my former protector, now a stranger who shares my blood but not my reality. Part of me hopes that distance from our parents might help him find his own path, might bring back the brother who once taught me to face my fears. But perhaps I'm clinging to a version of him that exists only in my memories. Second update, 23 days later. I'll keep this brief, unlike my previous novel-length update. Taking the advice of several commenters, I reached out to my favorite aunt, my father's sister. I explained my absence from Christmas this year, framing it as a necessary break for my mental health while wishing them a joyful holiday. Her understanding response and expression of pride in me felt like a warm embrace from across the miles. That small victory gave me the courage to finally cut the cord. When my mother texted on Wednesday night with their usual demanding tone, "If you're done trying to break apart the family, we expect you to be here by 9:30 on Christmas," I stood my ground. I told them that they alone were responsible for fracturing our family, and they should expect neither my presence at Christmas nor any future events. "I've finally learned to go where I am wanted," I wrote, "and that place is not with you." Sensing an incoming storm of insults and belittlement, I blocked both their numbers before they could respond. James remains unblocked for now. His response, or lack thereof, will determine whether that bridge burns as well. The weight that has lifted from my shoulders is indescribable, like breaking surface after being held underwater for years. On a brighter note, my boyfriend and I are about to embark on a ski trip for the holidays. The future feels full of possibility rather than dread. To everyone who took the time to read my story and offer advice, your kindness gave me the strength to choose myself. Thank you, and happy holidays to all. P.S. That earlier mention of the Hunger Games wasn't random. I'm still the same fandom-loving soul I was in my Tumblr days. While no one took that conversational bait, understandably, given the weightier matters at hand, my offer stands. If anyone wants to discuss the series, you know where to find me.